Hello, everyone. Today I'm joined by Amir, co-founder of Humblytics, an AI native analytics and conversion optimization platform. He's had 2 exits already and now focuses on building and helping companies become truly AI native. In this conversation, we break down how to actually run a business with AI, from AI-powered go-to-market and ad campaigns to building a Slack-based co-founder, to getting teams to adopt tools like Claude, and also what the future of AI native enterprises looks like. So how are you doing today, Amir?
Good. Thanks so much for having me on. I'm excited. I saw kind of your previous lineup and you had a great guests. I'm excited to see kind of a little different twists. We can get a little bit technical and also theoretical, talk about the landscape and show you some examples as well on kind of how we're using AI at Humblytics to be an AI native company. So I'm really excited for today.
Excellent. Yeah, I mean, as I mentioned to you when I reached out, typically we talk to public company CEOs, but where we are today, I mean, everyone has heard about AI, but I think there's a bit of a disconnect between what people actually think it can do and what it's actually doing today by the people that are leading in that area, which is going to affect all enterprises. So it's really topical and trying to raise awareness of that, basically. And so as someone who's like deep into that, we wanted to reach out to you.
Awesome.
Where are you calling from, by the way?
I'm actually based out of Toronto, but I spend my time between Southeast Asia in I move around a little bit in Asia, but primarily in Thailand, and I pretty much escape the cold in the winter in Canada and only come back here when it's just warm enough for me to be able to go outside. So
Yeah.
spend my time between the two. A slow mad, I would like to say,
Yeah.
is what I am.
So I thought we could start with a big sort of question. Where are we with AI right now? Like, uncover the misconceptions for us, and like, is the hype real? And can you build a company with AI agents now?
Absolutely. I think you know I'll give you maybe a little bit of my background, where we started and kind of my history in terms of like building companies and kind of where we are today. I would say I come from a background of like building products in the healthcare space. We essentially, when I first started my career, we're looking at how do we build interoperable systems between the medical records and the pharmacy systems and bring, electronic prescribing and better interoperability in the Canadian healthcare system. That was quite a while ago. And the landscape around how we build products, build teams was quite different versus what it is today. And afterwards, I did a little bit of consulting, and then ended up building a reasonable sized business in the healthcare technology space. There was a huge gap in being able to have deep industry expertise in healthcare and technology. And our at that time, our biggest leverage in building a great business was both industry expertise and human capital. Um, that has changed quite a lot over the past couple of years with OpenAI and Anthropic and a lot of these tools or models that have come out. It's become powerful enough where as the models get better or improve, you should almost see a correlation of the output of your company and the enterprise value as well, like a 10x value of that. So, a good example of that is you look at a lot of the existing tools today that like Replit or Cursor or Anthropic. As the models get bigger and the companies that are using these models, they're also exponentially getting better or bigger, 10x that. So in the past couple of years, after kind of building the companies and going through some exits, my focus was on what does an AI native company look like, and how do I build a company that is very lean and efficient and effective using the tools that we have today. And my co-founder that and I that have been kind of working together and building businesses for the past decade decided that this time around we want to build a business that is really focused on efficiency, being lean, and having the same level of impact that we had for the previous businesses. So, how do you get to a million revenue or 2 million revenue, but instead of or more, whatever the number is, with as few people as possible and leveraging a lot of AI tools. Previously we had a business like I think it was like 15 people, 17 people, doing about like 3 to 5 million in revenue every single year. And I look back and I think we're on track to hit to hit those targets with a much smaller team. So the premise was, how do we do the same thing with the tools that we have today?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really interesting. And obviously, a lot of people started using AI tools, but it's a lot more than just talking to an LLM, a ChatGPT. So it's evolved a lot. So it'd be great,
Exactly.
for you to just take us through a few things, show us what you're doing today. How do you use AI as a co-founder? What does your day-to-day look like?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I think it's important to have a little bit of premise in terms of like how where we are today and how it's evolved over time, right? Um, we when the first tools came out, it was really around, okay, like how do you just leverage existing tools to augment the existing work that you have. So maybe I'll just kind of give a little walkthrough of kind of where the evolution of AI itself. So um, when ChatGPT first came out, you're really looking at having, ChatGPT or Claude being helper, right? It's like an AI or a tool that is helping you with general purpose tasks without any sort of customization. And now we've seen an evolution of being able to automate things for you, right? So you give a set of instructions and context, um, access to external tools, especially when we started seeing tool calling and MCPs, where now these agents can access third-party tools to then do a specific task for you. So previously, you would give ChatGPT a bunch of information and say, hey, like break down what this means for me. So for example, you would upload your Stripe reports and say, what does my churn look like, or can you forecast a churn model? The evolution of that was now automation. We're saying now I want you to, if I every time I upload a Stripe report or connect to Stripe, I want you to do X, Y, Z. Now we're at the part of augmentation and agency where AI is fully embedded into the core workflow with a human still in the loop, and it can serve multiple functions. So you have things like Claude Cowork or Claude Code that is very much embedded within a specific function, whether it's go to market, design, sales, marketing, whatever the function is, and it's able to work across multiple different tasks, pull data from different platforms, and is very workflow specific. And now I think we're at the latter stage, and this is parallel with how would classify a company or teams within companies, where they go through this evolution or this like framework of helper, automation, augmentation, agency, where now you have AIs that is fully autonomous, something like OpenClaw that is able to execute tasks on its own. And all of this, I got to give credit to Anthropic. They've really kind of built out this framework, and they have a lot of great resources for this. And that's kind of where we are today. And the framework we try to both adopt at our companies and companies that we consult with is, what does that look like for you? Are you able to delegate tasks to it? Are you able to define what the output of that looks like? Is the AI, the model, able to actually be aligned with what you're looking for? So is there discernment? And is the information accurate? Are you able to take full responsibility for the output that's coming out of it? And over time, we had to kind of understand what does this evolution of how we work with these tools look like. First, it started with prompting, having the right prompting techniques. Then it was around, are you giving the right amount of context? And then are you giving the constraints that's required, the guardrails, the output, and then access to tools? And I would say Anthropic is probably a leader in the space where they are solving for problems that we didn't know existed. So a good example of that is before we would have to give a lot of context, system instructions, access to tooling, or load up a lot of tools to get the output that we need. And then, they've been very, very diligent with how efficient these models are. So for example, one specific example is progressive tool calling. Previously, you would connect a tool that would load all of this information into the model to have context on doing a specific task for you. And now it progressively exposes how it accesses these tools and how it accesses information. So that's just an example of kind of how we think through AI at a core and the principles behind it.
Mm-hmm. And can you take us through some examples?
Sure.
What are the high value examples of how it is your co-founder today? Like what automations you're using that probably most other people aren't?
Yeah, so I think part of it is for me specifically. So I work out of like Obsidian. It's we are like in a file system, markdown
What is
based.
Obsidian? Just for the people who don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. So Obsidian is basically it's a note taking app, but it's file based. So typically with Apple Notes, it's within the Apple ecosystem. You're required to, it's locked in, right? Like you don't really own the files. But with Obsidian, it's just an interface that sits on top of Markdown files. So you're able to create Markdown files and view it in an interface that is, readable, and you own the file, so you can take it anywhere. It's on your MacBook, on your Windows, whatever the case is. And this really works quite well because it's I guess a common denominator or a language between a lot of the models where they interface with JSON, text files, and Markdown files. And for me, I primarily use Obsidian for notes, even before LLMs were a thing, and use Claude Code on top of it to kind of enhance my work.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, one example is I shared an example a while back on Twitter, was using Claude Code and Obsidian and third-party tools to be able to automate paid marketing campaigns and outbound email campaigns.
Yeah.
So an example of that is being able to connect to third-party tools like Clay, Hunter, Apollo, whatever it is, to pull lead data, enrich the lead data, build out campaigns specifically in there, and then have follow-up emails. So, and a good example of that is we set up to create an email campaign for reaching, for Humblytics. So we're AI analytics and CRO tool. We want to partner with agencies. We want to go after marketing teams and enterprises and startups, and have an email outbound campaign to build awareness around it. So what I would do typically is essentially load up Claude Code within this workspace specifically. So I'll show you an example of what that looks like. So we're going to essentially open up the file here and load it within Claude Code. So this is a workspace that's going to open up in Claude Code. 1 second. Cool. So what I've done now is essentially I have Claude. I've opened up a terminal that's going to give me access to Claude Code within my Obsidian workspace. And what I can do is manipulate, access third-party tools, and add information to my existing Obsidian folder. So what I'm going to do is say, study this workspace, outline exactly what the email folder has. So to give you an idea while that's happening is I'm going to go back to this Obsidian folder right here and show you kind of what I previously have done, so you have an idea of what is possible. So we wanted to essentially build out a lead list of different agencies that are currently focused on building Webflow products. So basically, like our analytics tool works really well with Webflow. It's a third-party Webflow website builder. And I connected to Hunter to pull lead data from Hunter. It's a third-party tool that does lead enrichment, to actually find specific agencies and other companies and that use Webflow. And it was able to pull their specific emails, their positions, their names, and the companies that they're at using this specific tool.
And so how did it know that they were using Webflow?
So you can actually use, a couple things. So Hunter has built-in capabilities that's able to detect tools. So what they're looking at is a lot of like third-party website builders actually have like a code snippet inside of it that says built by Webflow or built with Framer. So that's what it's typically looking for.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and then basically what it did is Claude Code actually pulled all the leads and contacts at these specific companies, and then put together a strategy on how to actually target these people. So who are the personas? What does the competitive landscape look like? And then what is the email sequence actually set up? What should it look like in terms of reaching out to them? So this is all done through Claude Code, directly connected to my Obsidian. So what I typically do is use Claude Code to build out a strategy, and then from there have it mapped out in Obsidian, and then go and execute it in Hunter.io. So I'm going to show you a sandbox of kind of what that actually looks like, so that you can see how Claude Code built up the sequences essentially. So this is what we have so far. We have the leads and contacts, we have the strategy and the emails, and then I would typically take this and connect it to the sequences in Hunter. So we're going to go in here, and what we've done essentially is, I haven't launched this yet. This has been just set up. But what we've done essentially is we're going after agency owners, and it built out a sequence, a set of like emails that it followed up, and this was all done programmatically, connected directly to the emails to Hunter.io through the API, and sent out the email. So maybe this is not a good example. Let's find a better one.
So so Hunter has the capability to email. That's how I suppose.
Are you familiar with Hunter or no?
I'm familiar with Hunter. I've used it for finding emails for people, but I didn't realize that they'd gone into sort of sending the emails as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can find specific lead data as well, but also send out email sequences. Now, this is where I actually haven't sent this out yet, and I've ran previous campaigns. This is an example one I just had as draft, where this is where it's important to have the human in the loop process, right? Because it's like you don't want to just get AI to run this end to end, where it's finding the lead data, building out the sequences, and then sending this directly. You want to actually be involved in reviewing this. Like I don't think I would send an email style like this. This is probably not the best way to frame this. So I would go in and actually edit it, and then make sure that as we're targeting these people, it's relevant to the audience. Like it's the context, it's personalized. Because outbound emails is hard as it is, with or without AI. And if you're automating this whole thing without really having full understanding of it and like no visibility, I highly doubt it'll be very successful. We've typically ran. Yeah, we're not there yet. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so this is just one component of it, and really for this one, I have less expectations on, like on the enterprise side, I would probably go through LinkedIn and build relationships with the key decision makers at like a senior level. This is more so for visibility for top of brand, where it's like I want them to have visibility, and then I will probably run a middle funnel campaign where I'm running paid ads on Meta and not on Google, so that when they're searching for Humblytics, they're being targeted through the Google ad campaign. And I'll show you what that looks like as well.
Yeah, that'd be good. And just going back to the Obsidian, what was in Obsidian, the note-taking tool? Has that got your target market, details about the business? Yeah,
exactly.
So it's got all that context. So it's basically using that as the base for creating these campaigns.
Exactly. So I have a folder called a context library, and basically how it works is it has a breakdown of everything pertaining to my different like projects and businesses that I'm working on. So what I do is actually use AI to build out a set of context files that I would use within Claude Code to say reference this context folder, so you have a full understanding of our business and what we do. It's very similar to ChatGPT projects and ChatGPT or Claude projects, where you have both system instructions and context files that give you all the relevant information you need or you want to provide to your agent to be able to actually, to be able to ensure that it's giving you a good output. It's aligned.
MD files is it's very easy for Claude Code to read, basically.
Exactly. Yeah, it's text files, markdown files, JSON is a very good readable format for these LLMs to be able to actually understand the data.
Yeah. Okay.
Cool. So we've covered what the email side looks like, and I'll show you an example of how we also set up our paid campaigns. So again, these are just all sandboxes. These are just for like, I want to give you an idea of like how we map it out. But like we'll use also Claude Code to connect to Meta and Google and map out exactly kind of what the campaign launch strategy should look like. So this is just again, these are very early stages of everything that's happening. So I would take it with a grain of salt for anyone that is saying they're very successful with these kind of tactics. My purpose or my intent of this is to show what is possible, where we're seeing a convergence of both technical and non-technical people in different functions, and how they can use Claude Code as their key interface for work in the terminal to build out all of this. So I don't want to hype it up and say, yeah, this is driving outcomes, or this is the way. I just want to show what is in the world of possibilities, and you as the expert, whether you're a go-to-market expert, a paid media expert, can use these tools however you see fit to enhance and augment what you already do. So, for example, we use Claude Code specifically to map out campaigns for Meta and what each campaign would be kind of essentially targeting in the audience, and then even created specific like the audience library as well. So this is all done programmatically through Obsidian, and then we would connect to Meta directly to build out these campaigns without having to actually manually go and set it up. So we're programmatically doing this in a way. And you can even use other tools like Manus to pull relevant information. So this is just an example of like how the campaigns were built out in terms of strategy, and then we would have a prompt library.
So you're asking Claude Code to build the campaign in Obsidian in an MD file? Is that
exactly? So
in a
the steps
format that can be sent via API to Manus or a connection?
Exactly. So how it works is basically you can use Meta APIs and Google APIs to connect directly to Claude Code through the MCP and programmatically set up those campaigns. So you can essentially create both programmatic assets, programmatic ad strategy campaigns, and everything in there. And as a human in the loop, you're reviewing the work and then actually making it go live.
Yeah.
So I'll give you an example of, like, for example, how we created programmatic ad images for our Meta campaigns. Now, this is something that, for example, you would have multiple team members creating or being involved in the process for, where they would actually have to create the image assets, create the copy, and then test through it. So we're doing this programmatically, where we're saying, here's the context around our business, here's the campaign, here's all the assets that you have. So these are like UI images, and use these to now create an internal tool for us. So this is more of an internal tool that we have that creates different ads based on like the ad vertical category. So like case study, retargeting, competitor, product demo, pain point, social proof. So these are all programmatically created all through Claude Code using existing assets that we have, instead of having to have a designer design it, copywriter write it. So you can see exactly the headline, the primary text, the description that we can then programmatically load into Meta.
And this is a tool you've built yourself, essentially.
Claude Code did. I mean, I just basically, how we prompted is Claude Code. Here's context about the business. Here's all the assets. Build me an ad library tool where I can view all my ad assets in different categories.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so you just had images, some campaign copy, and it's just pulled them all together into different formats relevant for Meta.
Exactly. So maybe we'll show you an example of what that will look like. So we can go into Claude Code here and say, I just need to reference the file. So in the Meta folder, we have ad assets and ad viewers. Review the existing campaign strategy and content, create 5 more ads. And basically what it'll do is it'll reference all the existing context within this workspace folder across the prompt library, context of what the business is, the different existing assets that we have, and go ahead and create existing assets. So I think we previously had about 38 ads. So while that's happening, we'll go back and see. Actually, let's see what it works through. So what it's doing right now is going through all the existing paid Meta assets. So we have 38 ads in there already right now. Mm-hmm. And it's going to now most likely create 5 more ads in different categories within this ad viewer. So
and how does Claude view an ad as an image and understand what the image is? Is that built into Claude, or are you using something else? Or?
So these are all programmatically created with code. So the images are actually HTML code and CSS, which you're able to download as a PNG. So it's actually an HTML structure. So it's understanding it programmatically from a code standpoint.
Great.
Yeah. So we have we have the ad library in here. So it has a complete understanding of the design system, the ad structure, and the view registration, and it's going to create 5 new ads. So let's switch over to the ad library and see what it creates. So we have about 30 ads so far. We should probably see a couple more down here afterwards. It's still working through it. While that's happening, do you have any questions for me?
Yeah. So, one is actually about the Slack bot and how you use that, but maybe we'll do that after this.
We'll do that one afterwards. Yeah.
Yeah. The scraping, like research you do, that's probably a big thing that people can save time doing. I know there's a lot possible now with Appify and Firecrawl, stuff like this.
Exactly.
What sort of scraping do you do of websites? What's the most valuable sort of things that people can use it for?
Yeah. So Appify and Firecrawl are both great tools to kind of extend existing agent capabilities for scraping. And what that means is essentially like if you don't want to ever leave your existing Claude Code interface and want to just get additional information, whether it's brand assets, scraping context, and even, for example, what I showed earlier with the context library, so building out the LLM.txt files, which is an overview of a business, I would use Firecrawl to actually go to a website and scrape content. So, for example, if I wanted to build out an overview or a context library for my existing product, I would say, hey, go to this website using Firecrawl, scrape all this content for me, and then create an LLM.txt file, create a product messaging text file for me. So that's kind of the value add when it comes to Appify and Firecrawl.
And competitive intelligence, things like this. I'm assuming you do this. Yeah.
Exactly. So right now we'll go back to showing what Claude Code is doing. So right now it's actually creating a bunch of new ads. So it's now building it out using code. So it's not actually generating images, but using HTML to create the images that we would then install. We would then download later on. So it's essentially, creating ad 42. It's doing a competitive one. It's looking at different categories and then programmatically creating these ads, which would then take and load into Meta.
And just going back to the scraping and research, what do you think? What's the most valuable way of using it? If there's one thing people could start using it for?
For enrichment, right? So or gathering lead data. So for example, you want to do research on, find me the top 50. For us specifically, it's like find me the top 50 agencies that are using tools like Webflow and Framer that is within our target ICP. The agent is smart enough to know where to scrape, what to look for, and then actually find that and like find that information for us. Cool. So we had 38 ads before, we have now 43. It went ahead and programmatically created these ads for us. Now, like I would, again, as a human in the loop, I would work on refining some of this, right? There's a lot of text on here. I would then maybe also serve other example high performing ads, give it a library of ads that like, here's really good meta ads. You use this as reference to refine these existing ad sets. So we've now just programmatically created 5 ads that would have taken, a day or two from across multiple teams to create.
It's amazing. And so we're talking about human in the loop still. Do you think almost everything still needs that touch point especially just to improve, I think, but probably systems that you're putting in place?
100%. I would definitely always be involved in every single process, because again, it comes down to accountability, right? Like I'm responsible for the output here. I'm not going to have an agent fully go in and do everything end to end without me being involved, because I want to take accountability for what I'm doing and I'm still the expert here when it comes to some of these things. So it's like, I want to be involved in that process and give it the refinement it needs.
So like today, basically we're saying it's removing lower end admin sort of, or, low end junior roles at doing things, but it still need that strategic, oversight.
Exactly. You're still the expert, and it's really augmenting your work, right? Like it's a productivity multiplier. It's interesting. Like I probably work more now and have a higher output than I did before. Like with these AI tools, it was supposed to save me time, but it's actually I'm working more, but I have a higher output for it. You know what I mean?
And so if execution is no longer if we just like pull this out over a few 6 months or whatever, a year, if execution is no longer a problem, especially for companies like you that are using it to the top of its potential at the moment, or at least like not as much of a problem as it used to be, you can run campaigns, generate creatives, optimize in real time, like you can get those feedback loops going as well. What is actually limiting what is limiting performance, do you reckon, in our systems today? At least at the companies using us to the top of their ability.
Yeah, so this one that's a really good question. So I think actually it comes down to company culture and enablement, right? Which is, I'll maybe frame the question better. It's like, how does a company become AI native, or how do they get the best uses out of these tools? If I was, considering your audience, I would say, um, uh, at a senior level, if I was sponsoring something like this, I wouldn't really focus on, oh, how many ChatGPT licenses do we have, or what does token output usage look like? It's more around, are we giving people the right tools and resources to be able to learn how to actually use this, to stay to stay ahead of all the landscape is changing so fast. So it's like there's always new tools, new resources, but are we enabling them to learn, and the sandbox and the environment to actually play around with this? And then two is, as a leader, am I championing? Am I a good champion to say, like, listen, we should use these tools, and we're not going to let company culture or bureaucracy get in the way to slow you down. I worked for a venture lab for huge multinational financial services insurance company, and this was at the peak of like ChatGPT and AI. And I remember I had helped build a website for them really quickly that would have taken months and $250,000 budget to do. And despite that, they still had to go through the steps and processes to get it approved, which I understand, that's the case here. But it's like, you really want to take away the friction to be able to enable your team members, your colleagues and your team to actually use these tools without having to go through the red tape.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's almost like an anti-AI movement, I think, that stops people if you don't want to adopt it, then it's going to hold you back from seeing the value in it. And there's definitely a sort of, at least in the last 6 months, it's almost like a lot of people are saying, oh, maybe it's all hype, it's not actually doing what people are saying it's doing. But a lot of people don't understand how the people at the top of the game are using it.
Yeah, I think a byproduct of like sharing our journey, like building an AI native company, has led to a lot of companies coming to us and say, hey, like, how can we work with you to like consulting for AI native? And I work with a lot of existing companies today. And when I sit down with a lot of these leaders, like at different functions, I say, listen, like, we shouldn't do this company wide across the board. Let's find a very specific team. Like usually we do these like AI fluency benchmarks where we look at a team that is going to be the most open to trying something new like this, and say, let's focus on a team, like your go-to-market team, your marketing team, build a mandate around what AI will look like, assess where they are on the fluency scale of like how they currently use AI, the problems they have, and how they want AI to solve for it. And then let's just upskill them, enable them to understand what is in the world of possibilities. So a lot of consulting I do today is not around going in and implementing an automation or building out a specific agentic workflow for them, but just showing, here's what you can do, here's how you can use it, here's what matters, here's why prompting matters, here's why context matters, here's how MCPs and tools actually work. Let's build something together, and then give them the sandbox or the environment to go and build something afterwards. So success is around for them to be able to do something without my direct involvement. And then most importantly, at a senior level, give them the sponsorship and support they need to do something like this without any red tape.
And do you think it's fair to say, in the world of today, the biggest competitive advantage would be using these tools to the top of their ability in whatever firm you're at?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I think, it's both internal and external facing. So maybe I'll give an example of what that is and like what we're seeing. So we're really trying to look at everything that we're like, what we're building with the companies is a test bed for what we think is going to be the future. So I'll just talk about kind of what I'm working on right now a little bit to give you an idea of kind of where we think directionally where things are headed. So a couple things. One is, we actually had built our website using first Webflow, and then we migrated to Framer. Like for those that don't know, it's like a website builder. And then one of the challenges we ran into was we wanted to programmatically create pages based on the campaigns that we were running to speak to our audience. So meaning that we wanted to be able to say, okay, like let's have a dedicated page for the director of marketing at this specific industry and have the messaging on the hero section tied to that. It became a bottleneck for us to be able to create these pages really quickly in Framer because one, we had a dependency on a Framer developer and just the turnaround time to be able to experiment and run these experiments. So we ended up actually migrating to a custom code site, and we said, okay, the biggest challenge we have is CMS. The moat that a lot of these website builders have is obviously the dependency that's removed on developers, but also the CMS where they can just create content at scale. With the rise of agents now and the fact that they can be accessed through Claude, through Slack, through Cursor, your agent is the new CMS. The whole thesis is that moving forward, you can programmatically use agents to create pages and manage your content all through as your CMS. So like this is a service we actually launched through through our holding company, which was, being able to actually migrate your existing site from Webflow and Framer to a custom code site so that you're removing the dependency on developers completely and using the agent as your CMS so that you can quickly and programmatically add content, update content. This is like perfect for a lot of founders. Actually, like we work with a lot of founders that come to us to say, hey, like, can we quickly change the heading text on this like website? They don't even still want to go into Webflow and Framer. They just want to be able to talk to an agent to say, hey, change this for me, right? And also, like we're seeing now, just yesterday, Stripe announced MPP, Machine Payments Protocol, where agents are now actually interacting with third-party sites and apps, creating accounts, paying for services. Like the future is probably going to be agents interacting with services and websites just as much as humans. Getting information like Firecrawl, using Firecrawl to scrape data, or having an agent go and sign up for a product on your behalf, like what we saw with OpenClaw. So we're seeing a lot of infrastructure for authentication, payments, and email. Like we use something called Agent Mail to have where our agent actually has access to its own inbox. You're going to want to create websites in the future that are agent friendly. So for example, we've talked about how agents are really good with seeing markdown files, where behind the scenes, we're going to have new endpoints where agents can just go to a URL, hit a very specific endpoint that gives them a complete breakdown of here's what the product is, here's how you can create an account, here's how you can access your API, here's what the schema looks like, without having to like crawl every single page or try to find where to go. You essentially have a markdown that has access to everything that you need. And we think that's the future of websites. So, yeah.
I mean, most people, like, it used to be the gatekeeper, is either a CMS or a developer. And yeah, it's just far simpler just to ask it to do something, isn't it? I mean, for anyone who's used Claude Code for coding, they know that this is just you can literally just ask it in a terminal and it's smart enough to know where you can just drop in a photo of where you're where in the code or on the website, the website you want to do it, and it's smart enough to know that the heading is there, and you'll look to change the copy on there, and it takes seconds rather than minutes, whatever.
Exactly. So it's like, what does the new UX or UI for that look like? How do you build? It kind of goes back to like earlier in my career. It's like, how do you build interoperability between all these different systems to have a readable format between them to be able to exchange information? And this is a very similar parallel to that. It's like, how do you create a new common language? And you're seeing this with Cloudflare. They came out with a new crawl endpoint where you hit, you can give an API endpoint to hit to crawl everything relevant about your website. And that's kind of, I think, the future where you're going to have we're already there right now is agents to be able to quickly access this information. And then, another example of that is, you talked about kind of internal Slack agents. I can't specifically show a demo of like our agent because it's like private client information that it's going to access, but I can give you an example of what it looks like, which is, we needed one of the biggest gaps I always had was reporting, like being able to get a daily report of how much money did we make, what does a funnel look like, are we losing money, are we making money, what does reactivation expansion look like? So we ended up building a custom agent at that time before Claude Code came out, where it would pull information from Stripe, ChartMogul, all these different tools, and then give us a report. And we ended up actually productizing it because we had other companies that came to us and said, hey, we need something like this as well, where you can essentially have a chief of staff in your Slack. We use Slack, but it's like our primary tool, but it's essentially an internal agent built on top of like Claude Code, where it accesses all the different tools within your organization, and you can connect it to Stripe, email, Notion, Perplexity, everything within your existing stack, and have it be as your chief of staff. So whether it's pulling reporting, being able to do like automations on scheduling, like here's 3 tickets you should know about, being able to create content for like, let's say, investor meetings, for example, and having your stand-ups set up across your different teams, or even find information like around leads when you're within your existing pipeline. We use this tool religiously inside Slack. We even have a dedicated channel where we've created sub agents, where you have multiple Slack agents actually working together and mapping it out. So now programmatically, we have agents that are creating pages for us on our website. This goes back to my earlier point about having custom code built sites, where now it's going in directly to our repository, looking at our top of funnel data within our analytics tool, and then creating a page based on the pipeline of like users that are coming in and making it more personalized.
Yeah, it's really interesting to see how things have moved along, even over 6 months. Things have become possible that weren't before. Where, if we just look into the future, what does the enterprise of the future look like? If say, and then because things are moving just so fast, in a year's time, how do we still need a human in the loop in every step, or are some tasks we can trust AI enough to do it autonomously? Where are the LLMs going to advance to, and what do you see the enterprise of the future looking like?
I actually think we're going to pay a premium for a lot of the expertise in this space, right? Like, I would happily love to like have team members that are, we have fractional team members that work with us, but they're experts in what they do, and we, that's the value or the premium we're paying for, right? Where it's like, you're the human in the loop. We're giving you the tools you need to get the work done to save time where you don't need to be wasting, but we still are looking to your expertise and your industry knowledge to stamp your name on it, to say, I'm accountable for this output and this outcome here, right? We're seeing a shift where these tools made us now productive, and now we want it to be outcome oriented. I no longer want to just, be more efficient or save time, but I want it to actually drive outcomes. And I think that's the North Star a lot of enterprises or teams should look to, is how can these tools actually be outcome focused? It's cool. I mean, it's cool that I can create an email campaign or an ad campaign in Obsidian and use Claude Code and save all this time. But is it actually working? Is it saving me time? Yes. But is it making me more money? We're still figuring that out. And that's why even earlier I said, listen, like, we're doing this, but I don't even, I'm still experimenting. But I want to show what's in the world of possibilities, right? Mm-hmm. So for enterprises, I come from an enterprise background. I've worked in big companies. I would say silo teams that have no red tape and bureaucracy and a good champion to get them to do these things will do really, really well. And you start small and then you build, you bottom up approach. And then on the flip side, where I am now, I truly think you can build 5 million, 10 million, 20 million, even $50, $100 million companies with being fully AI native with as few people as possible using these existing tools.
Yeah, wow. We'll start to see those sort of stories over the next 6 to 12 months come out, probably.
We're already seeing it. We're seeing a lot of consumer-facing apps that are solo founders or just a small fractional team, no funding even now. That are selling for millions of dollars. Yeah,
that's incredible, really. And what's your opinion on, in the future, who's going to win, the foundation models or the applications, or is it going to be more of a mixed bag?
Yeah, that's a really good question.
People talk about this all the time, right? And it's really hard to know, and it'd just be good to get your insights on it. I mean, just for people who don't know, the foundational models, we're talking about Claude, we're talking about OpenAI, etc. And application layer are things like Humblytics. Things like
that. So I think from an application layer standpoint, the companies that are building on top of this, I mentioned earlier, like as the models get better by 5x, 10x, the applications should as well. Like a good example is Replit. I think Replit, for people that aren't familiar, Replit used to be like a code editor and it had some really like multi-collaborative tooling and features. When OpenAI came out and Claude came out, they added AI agent capabilities. The company's revenue like 5x, 10x, 20x. As the models got better, their revenue went up. They went from like 5 million to 400 million ARR, for example. So you're going to see that across the board with a lot of the application layers. To your earlier question around who wins in this, yeah, I think there is no moat. The moat is speed, execution, speed and execution, I would say. But I do think that personally, Claude is winning. They Anthropic is winning. They focused on enterprise from the get-go. I personally used all the tools, and I always advocated for Claude within the workspace just because of how focused and fine-tuned it was for getting work done. And they seem to just they figured it out. They really did, from both a coding application standpoint, from work, everything around it. It's less consumer focused and more work oriented, which is really what matters here for me, at least.
Yeah. And do you think there'll be a time where the models, because I mean, feasibly, there's no limit to the intelligence that they can get to? Because I think at the moment they're sort of genius level on specific tasks, at least when you do these tests. But they're not like a human. Obviously, they can get smarter. So in a year's time, they're going to be a lot smarter. What on earth? I just don't understand in the future how any human could be smarter in a specific area, or how do they maintain an advantage if some of these models have access to an insane amount of data, right, in a specific area? But let's say marketing, and they're smarter at synthesizing it and coming up with ideas. Is that a future that exists, or like, I don't know, it's crazy to think about it.
Yeah, I don't think I haven't answered that question yet, to be honest. I'm trying to. That's a question I think about every day as well. Like, it's like an existential crisis for myself, where it's like, am I gonna be relevant today or tomorrow? And maybe I have like a 2-3 year window to just make as much money as possible and then go live on a farm. I don't know. That's a really good question. I think for now we're safe probably, and we might revisit this in a year from now. Yeah.
We'll check in.
We'll check in. Yeah.
Cool, man. Yeah, I mean, this has been great. Thanks so much for taking us through all these different areas that people can use today to get more out from their work. And like you said, they obviously need to dig into it themselves and see what works best for them. Maybe before we wrap it up, if you could just tell us, like, what should someone work on first or build first to try and become AI native?
Yeah, listen, I would say, again, I work with a lot of companies on AI consulting with a lot of C-level executives that had no technical prior knowledge. I've tried to teach them Claude Code maybe 6 months ago, 7 months ago, and they were still very much hesitant to use it, like opening up a terminal. But now that I actually had lunch with someone a couple of days ago, a CEO at a pretty big company, and he's like, I built my own app, I built my own Slack agent, and I was so fascinated. I was like, what changed over time? And it was the fact that the models have gotten so smart to be able to debug and just get them going really, really quickly.
It's remove the distance of like, it went wrong and everyone's just like, can't bother with it anymore.
Exactly. Like the friction point of a terminal was so scary to them, but now it's not anymore. So to your question, I would just say the best thing to do is just download Claude Code, come up with a specific idea or problem that you're trying to solve for, and then work backwards and use Claude Code to learn and understand how it's approaching and solving the problem, and just build something. That is the best way to do it, by doing. And you learn by doing is what I would advise.
And is the terminal the future, or do you think so?
Yeah, absolutely. I had a thing before. I used to say cursor was the interface for work. I take that back now. I think the terminal is the interface for work. Yeah.
Okay. Cool, man. Yeah, thanks so much. I really appreciate it. I don't know if you want to say anything before we wrap up.
Yeah, no, I mean, if anyone's curious about what I do, you can just find me online, Amir, MXT, AMIR, MXT.
Cheers, Amir. And cool. Yeah, have a great day. Thanks for the opportunity.